You only lead once, right? Lately, we've seen the nature of also leaders that have come to the National Assembly. Very dramatic. This is Honorable Salasia? Yeah?
Yes.
So is he on a drunken stupor? Is it being depicted here or what? We've seen the warring factions also on the podiums as well. This is what is in the Star this morning. And Ruto takes war to Uhuru's doorsteps. Who will win? We can see the gloves, okay, that is jutting out from Mount Kenya as it is right now. That is the red and the blue. And we've just played you by some of the sentiments from the foot soldiers of Gachagua and foot soldiers of Ndindi Nyoro. Right, we shall be looking at that as well. And bring it on. The war continues. You can see that is the judiciary, and the president is in the ring there, fighting the judiciary. You're all aware about what is happening right now. And also looking at the academia, Ministry of Education, Junior and Secondary School, JSS, we're given to understand that there will be, of course, an outflowing of pupils in schools right now, looking at or going by the dailies as it is, and a lot of capitation has not also hit the accounts of the legislators of the schools as well. Looking at the CDF, that has been also a niggling worry as it stands. It just gives you a picture of what we are buckling down to discuss a bit. But let me just begin with this particular editorial cartoon, and I come to you, Honorable Omatinga, right now, so that you can give us a clear picture of what is happening, going by what you've seen on the television today, and the rift that is growing between factions of Mount Kenya, from the Jubilee side, from Kenya Kwanza as well. Is the situation, if you dial back to 2022 and 2024, will you say the situation is still the same? That they were very bullish in 2022 regarding the current administration. What is happening in 2024 from your own projection?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying from the onset that it is indeed very unfortunate that we've already started as readers engaging in the 2027 elections. We still have a lot of things that we promised Kenyans that we will deliver. It is not lost to us that the cost of living has dodged us. We are quite happy that now the cost of fuel has dropped by 5 shillings, and the cost of milk has dropped also. But looking forward, there are some of the promises that we made on what we'll do to the economy, to the commitments of the Kenya Kwanza government. It is quite unfortunate that some politicians would want to drag Kenyans back into the elections of 2027, and we've not even done, we've only done 1.5 years. Most of the things that we promised are yet to be delivered. I want to say that what's going on in the Mount Kenya region, this is actually just, you'd call it the siblings rivalry, which I do not think that should be blown out of proportion. It is time that Kenyans realize that the competition that was there in 2022 was between one William Samoei Ruto and one Raila Amolo Odinga. Kenyans were not in contest. After the election, as has been stipulated in the Constitution of Kenya, Kenyans remain one country, and whoever takes the government has the mandate of delivering to the Kenyans. It is indeed unfortunate that a young group of Kenyans, all people from Murang'a, because that is actually limited to a few individuals in Murang'a. The talk on the ground is, how are we going to deliver on the promises that we made? Remember, during the campaign period, we moved around the country promising guaranteed minimum returns for the farmers. I do recall that just last week we had a meeting with the Minister of Cooperatives and MSCs, Chelugui, where we engaged the farmers on the 80 shillings Cheli Fund advance, and we agreed that that money should not be given in bits, it should be given as whole, so that Kenyans can get out the problems. We can see in all the media that Kenyans are faced with the challenges of taking back their children to school. We know that the market prices, the world prices have not been doing well. However, with increasing the exchange rate of the dollars, most of these commodities, if not all of them, are sold in dollars. So you could have expected the farmers to get better returns. I think we are getting our priorities wrong. However, it is important to note that what happened in Murang'a is actually limited to a few constituents of Murang'a, and this is what you'd call a problem, small problem with sibling slavery. And I think it does not reflect the feelings of Kenyans, or the Mount Kenya region for that matter. The priority right now, if you go to the ground, people are worried of how they're going to get back their kids to school. People are worried of how the cost of living will be managed. People are worried about how they'll fetch better prices for their cash crops. These are the priorities that we as leaders should be addressing. It should not be lost to us as politicians that we only have a mandate of 5 years, 1.5 years down the line, and we're still singing the same song, and we're starting talking about 2032. Who says that we'll even be there 2027? Kenya is not made up only of 2 tribes. It is not made of only people from Murang'a and Nyeri or Kiambu. There are other counties in this country. And what we saw in the last general election, and I thought this was going to be an eye-opener for the Kenyans, where we had 2 presidential candidates who do not come from the Mount Kenya region. This was a good starting, where people were discussing on the merits of each candidate without looking at the ethnical background. If we want to be future-oriented and moving forward, we must actually divorce the politics of ethnicity. We must divorce this community-based politics where we believe it's people from Murang'a, Kirinyaga, and if the argument was to go as being praised by the people who spoke in that meeting, there are people from Kirinyaga, they've never produced a president. There are people from Embu, there are people from Meru, there are people from Tharaka Nithi. And Kenya is not composed of only Mount Kenya counties. And it is high time we say this country is big enough for everybody. And it is high time we say even people like Honorable Marim here, they have what it takes to lead this country, irregardless of where they come from. I think this debate is immature, it's premature, I think, and I think it is uncalled for. Most importantly, we in the Kenya Kwanza part of the government must know that we have a very big responsibility of delivering to our people what we promised. What the Mount Kenya region wants to hear now is, are they going to get their guaranteed minimum returns? Are they going to fetch good prices for their cash crops? People, if you look at the newspapers today, you'll see 5-6 pages of Kenyans' property being auctioned because the economy is not doing well. The discussion we should be having right now is, how do we bring about our economy to revamp again?
I'm looking at the Daily Nation, and thank you, Honorable Matinga. I'm looking at the Daily Nation. I can see suppliers from your county, especially. This is in regard to schools. Schools taken to court over debts. 10 cases against schools at small claim courts. And there's a crisis here. Just a week, it says, after schools reopened, suppliers have dragged institutions that owe them money to courts, even as principals asked the government to release unremitted billions of shillings under the free day secondary education. Are you intimately familiar with this situation on the ground?
We know, yes, we have quite a number of suppliers who have moved to court because of these pending bills. We know pending bill has become a thorn in the flesh of our economy. We know that the government owes several hundreds of billions to suppliers, and we know now that schools are normally supplied by small enterprises. To them, even 1 million shillings is a lot of money. We know that a lot of people have gone into financial distress because the supply chain management system has been compromised, sometimes willingly, and we need to look at it. When someone is moving to court, we should be answering, and moving forward, I'll actually be lobbying with by federal registratures. We must take the responsibility, whoever makes or initiates such a procurement, knowing very well that there is no money, that's against the law. However, there are some who have willingly compromised even the suppliers, like exaggerated the prices, added, what you'd call exploitative tendering system. We must also look at that. It is not just a question of the pending bills. Some of them, how did they come into being? And that's why I would want to thank the president, because when he formed the pending bills commission, it is an opportunity to even explore how that came from. We were in Turkana County the other day, and my colleague senator is here, and we were actually surprised that 10 years after devolution, and with a whopping 7.2 billion pending bill, you could not see anything for that money. So the question should be, are all these pending bills we're talking about genuine? Some of them we know that they've been exaggerated. We know that some of them has been a scheme to exploit Kenyans, and therefore it is an opportunity. We as Kenyans, as we talk about fighting corruption, we must also take our rightful duty of ensuring that we pay for what has been delivered at the rightful time and prices.
Thank you. Thank you, Bwana Senator. Let me just come to Senator Danson Mungatana here. Still, the resettlement is a big issue in your county as it is right now. Can you just give us also the current state of play?
What, resettlement?
This resettlement after the floods?
Yeah. First of all, we want to appreciate the visit by PS Raymond Omolo, who came to visit us. You know, he chairs the technical committee of all the CSs and the PSs who are dealing with the emergency issues around the floods. So he came to do like an assessment of what has happened, what they have achieved, lessons learned, and how these things can be done better in future. So we visited several places when he was there over this weekend, and one of the issues that came up is resettlement of those IDPs. You know, and we have proposed as a leadership, and which is something he said the government is willing to enter into negotiations and have the conversation around our proposal. And our proposal is that those who have moved to higher ground, they have settled in grounds or land which is not theirs, okay? So what the government needs to do is to talk to the owners of those lands and isolate the portions that are necessary to do resettlement, so that going forward in future, those areas that they have come to can become new settlements. Then the older places, which is very near the river and at a risk of flooding, can be places where farming can go on. And I'm saying this because, you see, river flooding in our place is not an issue. The normal flooding is used to do irrigation. When the waters recede, we go in and do a lot of farming. But then when the water comes in excess, like this El Nino time, then it becomes destructive. So what we are saying is that in terms of resettlement, the higher places should be now purchased, or whatever arrangements they can make, the national government, county governments, with the owners, to allow people to have a more settled place. But down here also, where the traditional areas have been, should be protected for purposes of continuing with the normal economic activity. So that's the status, and we left it that way. I think that will be implemented in due time.
Right. I wanted just to follow up on the issue of, because also the governors and the national government have been toing and froing on the issue of the ECDE education. That now we can see the national government want to claw back and get sole, of course, leadership over ECD. And the governors are feeling, they've not been widely consulted, and they're taking special umbrage of this as well. But also the national government wanting to implement the Presidential Working Party. Some of our recommendations were put there, is that this will actually be, and it should be under the
central government.
The central government, the national government, yes, because of the resources and the teachers, and that particular bracket is very key when it comes to, the cognitive development of the children as it is, and we do not have sufficient resources. So do you think this is a way
very good idea.
Is a good idea?
There are two areas that I think this national government should take over. Claw back and take it back, as you put it. ECD, health.
ECD and health.
And health is dead. The county governments have messed that sector like hell they have. You've got more than 4,000 doctors who don't have jobs right now. You have massive wastage, massive corruption and all the stuff that you can imagine. So that area needs to be taken back to central government as soon as possible. The same thing also with these other formative years of our children. And there's nothing the county governments are doing. I don't know around your areas if there's anything going on. But there is absolutely nothing the county government is doing about the ECD education. Those children, people like those ones who can afford it, take it to private schools. But the others, I mean, it's a problem. So we need to take some of those functions back to central government. The other area is the skills, the TVET. Central government, central government is doing a very good job. Ordinarily, that should also be devolved. But you see, the central government did see that the county governments are not in a position to move on that. So There's a lot going on from the central government in that area. So I think we have a problem in those two sectors, the ECD, the early childhood, and as well as the health sector. Those ones are left to the county governments. I think it's a disaster.
Right. Let me hear from Makali. We'll come to Honorable Mugatana.
I wanted to say something about that because I was in a prize-giving ceremony back in my county. And then the practical thing is that in the school, you see, in an ordinary school in Tana River County, you will find that the early childhood classes are within the primary school.
Yeah.
Many of those places have not been built by the county government. County government is supposed to build those ECD classrooms. But you'll find that what has happened in practical is that they still go to squeeze within the schools that are in existence.
Existing structures.
Those are the facts. And the other fact is this. Where they have tried to build, some very illogical decisions have been made. You'll find an ECD which has been built like, 2 kilometers away from the village. Now, how do you expect me to take my baby that side?
3 years old.
So you'll find an ECD classroom, it's a ghost classroom. So I think the Presidential Working Party is on to a point, and I'm giving you facts that are there from my county. I don't know about other counties. So if those are the facts, then we'll need to have a discussion around that, governors and the Minister of Machogu Education. Where can be the central point? Where's the meeting point? Is it really fair to build an ECD classroom so far away? Is it really fair to claim that you are having ECDs under you and yet those children are being housed, being fed under the primary school budget? So what is it that we are talking about? I think that Presidential Working Party has given a point that needs to be examined. And if governors are complaining about it, then let's have a discussion around what is it that they want to do that can't be done. I think the fears with governors, and I'm here really, I really want to support devolution and all that, but the fear of losing money is more of the intention than really looking after those facilities. Because the facilities really, there's a problem. I just wanted to say
it's not the delivery.
I think it's my time.
We'll give it a... Okay. Honorable Makali, yes.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think, Dipal, I want to agree with my colleagues. And unless the governors are saying that they have not been involved in terms of discussing on the way forward, I think every Kenyan would want to see the ECD classes going back to the national government. And there are reasons for that. The first thing is the issue of standards, standardization. As my colleagues are saying, you go to a school and you realize that even in different counties, the kind of classroom they are doing, they are different from one county to the other.
Okay.
So the issue of standardization is important. The other issue which is very critical is that because of that small division, like now, the NGCDF, we are doing a lot of work in schools, education sector. So I go to a school, I find there is an ECD class which is set somewhere next to the primary school. And because it's just under the county government, as I'm renovating the rest of the school, doing new classrooms, I can't touch that particular structure. So you go to most schools, you find you have a very beautiful school which has been renovated, but there's one standalone class somewhere which is very dilapidated and you can't do much to it. So I think the whole idea is ECD is just part of the main education system.
Yeah.
Why can they allow it to be part of the national government? At the same time, the other thing is the recruitment of teachers. If you go to most of these counties, the issue of teachers, ECD teachers, because they are being recruited by the county government, there are those who are on permanent and pensionable terms, there are those who are on casual terms, there are those who have certificates, there are those who don't have certificates. So there's a lot of confusion. And this is an area, really, I'm not an expert in the education matters, but I think this is an area we need to have a national conversation, as Senator Mugatana is suggesting, so that we agree that even though this belongs to you, when you look at the change before the Constitution, but the purpose of practical implementation and the smooth operation of this particular area, I think it's good this comes to the national government. But before I close my remarks, I think it's important I also comment on this matter on Central Kenya, the issue of the power games, which are playing there. You know, Dibal, the young people who wanasema mapema ndio best. And to me, to me, I think there is no harm for people to express their ambitions. What is critical is that we manage the ambitions. Like Senator Wamatinga is saying, the truth of the matter is a bit early in terms of now going to full throttle kind of politics. But what is coming out, I think what they are saying is, Central Kenya is still not really in a situation where they are saying these are, the issue of the kingpins in different regions. It's like they are telling us they are not ready with one who they can now all rally behind. So there is this power game between DP and Didi Nyoro. There's also the other issues I think Wamatinga is not telling us. There is this strong feeling like that Nyeri has produced a president, Kiambu has produced 2 presidents. It's now the turn of Muranga.
What about Kirinyaga?
To produce, Kirinyaga is like an apex to the fence of So
it's an apex of Nyeri.
Of Muranga.
Are the border even?
Yeah, it was part of Muranga and the other one was part of Embu. So they always feel like Kirinyaga can be. But I'm telling you that's what is now coming up. And indeed, Nyoro is my chair, budget committee, and I can tell you, this mobilization is actually targeted now that they're saying this is now our time, Muranga. And I heard one of them say, what Honorable Matiba could not achieve, say they see that being achieved through Didi Nyoro. But what I want to say is just Didi Nyoro is my colleague, is a friend. It's good to manage ambitions. At times you might be ambitious and you find you have issues. So I know what he's thinking through, but at the end of the day, for now I think let's allow people to work. Let's continue pushing his agenda, but he has to manage it very cautiously for him to achieve what he wants to achieve.
Honorable Wamatinga, you want to weigh on that a bit as well, just to react to what he's saying?
Well, true. I agree with him that Didi Nyoro, like any other politician, I myself included, you'd want to see yourself progress from one position to the next. But I do concur with him, it's a bit early, but disagree with him that Muranga would feel like they are not well represented in the government. That's not true. They have 2 cabinet ministers. They have Treasury is with Muranga, and now public lands with Alice Wahome, and they equally hold very strong committee positions. And
I said presidency.
Not
those
now, in terms of presidency, I would want to looking at it differently in terms of even the numbers. I would want to say that even Meru, they have bigger numbers than Muranga in terms of the voters. Equally, Kirinyaga has quite good numbers. Therefore, I think it is actually quite unfortunate that we'll be moving in this ethnocentric kind of politics where we say it's this region, because we have 47 counties. Unless we are saying that we will have 47 deputy presidents, each and every county deserves to be represented at the national level, because they are all Kenyans. And I would want to actually say this is just a tide in a teacup. Let's not blow it out of proportion. Of course, as Mheshimiwa said, Mapema ndio best, that is the young generation, but we know that things don't work like that. Of course, the issue of the kingpin in Mount Kenya region, we've never found ourselves in such a kind of a situation before, since the entry of multi-party democracy. Remember, at the entry of multi-party democracy, we had Kibaki and Matiba, and in every political 5-year cycle, we've always had a presidential candidate who was formidable. For the first time in multi-party elections, we did not have a formidable candidate from the mountain region. There were some people, Wairia was a presidential candidate and he comes from Muranga. So people from Muranga claiming that they've never had a shot or they've never had it. It's only that Wairia did not make it, but he was a presidential candidate. So moving forward, I do not think that's the kind of debate that we should be having. Farmers back at home in Muranga, in Nyeri, in Kirinyaga, in Meru, they want to hear us talk about their coffee, their tea, their milk. They want us to talk about the cost of living. They want us to talk about the poor performance in the last Form 4 examinations that saw very big giants perform very, very poorly. And this is one of the questions that I'll be putting once we go back to the House. I'll be raising a statement and a petition. How comes our schools have performed so poorly as compared to other giants who have actually performed very, very well? And there are some glaring mistakes, there are some glaring patterns that we must look outside what you'd call a normal curve. It was there the last exams. It's there again. We must start asking questions. Is it a deliberate move by somebody seated somewhere to differentiate the people from the mountain region? These are some of the questions that our people would want.
So for your assessment, you think there is a political underhand?
Yes,
in this?
it is. Indeed, it is.
So
because
the reflection that we have...
call a normal flow of a curve. Once you see it's outside, and I'm not an educationist, but I know as an engineer there is what you'd call this is a normal flow of the curve. Once you go outside it, then you must raise questions. How? Why? And that's a serious question that we want to start discussing.
So this is preparation and posterity, or on a divide between Mount Kenya, especially when it comes on economic empowerment, as you're trying to say, and other regions, and it is solely through education, right? Is that what you're trying to actually say? In other words, let's say from Farah. We'll come to
no. You see, we've been independent now for over 60 years. And we've had presidents coming only from two communities.
Yes, good point.
and
That's what I wanted to say was.
Yeah.
And for people from the mountain region to presume that they must start lining themselves up for 2032 is
quite unfortunate.
It's pretty much, I wouldn't call it natural, but traditional. You know what I mean? And because the presidency has gone twice to Kiambu and once to Nyeri, for Muranga now to feel that this is our turn, Matiba never made it. And by the way, Matiba was going to win the elections of 1992 if he had not been stopped from going to some of those areas. I mean, he was moving on like literally a bulldozer, cleaning up the place. So for them now to feel that this is our turn, we can't take this thing back to Nyeri again, is more or less in line with what has been happening. Now, when you look at the wider mountain region, it's also, I'm talking about the facts. I'm talking about the real facts. Meru and Embu are literally appendages to this. I mean, there's no way you can put all the mountain region's votes into one basket. If you had a Meru presidential candidate or a Adaraka or a Nidi or an Embu presidential candidate, you know what I mean? It's never happened before, and I don't think it's going to happen now. There was a very powerful frontal move last time to have Kindiki Kithure
yes,
as a running mate for Ruto. And what I know from some very, very close friends who are very close to Ruto, and I'm talking from the Kalenjin backyard, they knew that was a non-starter. And some of them said, look, if that happens, then we better start making peace with Raila, because then he's going to be the president. You know what I mean? And let's face it, Ruto got 44% of his votes from the mountain region.
Yes, 44.7.
44.7% of the total votes that Ruto got were from the mountain region. That's a serious, powerful juggernaut block that you literally cannot take for granted. So to keep that together is a good thing, and it's good for Ruto for this contestation and the internal mountain contestation to start early, as opposed to how it was last time. It was the last minute that the decision on Rigade was reached. Other than taking a chance and a gamble on the last minute, no. Let it start now.
Let's start early so that you can you can know what is good in the strategy.
Whoever is going to emerge, I mean, this is going to continue for a while. There's no question about that. And whoever is going to emerge between Nyoro and Gachagua has a good number of years to literally popularize himself and maintain, solidifying the bloc, so that the bloc stays exactly the way it was in 2002.
But looking at that basket, when you're talking about 44.7%,
yes,
and the fragmentation, the segmentation that is happening right now.
It's normal. It's going to happen. But even if it happens, let me tell you one thing. There's going to be a lot of changes. I mean, the areas like the north, which did not vote for Ruto last time. I mean, in my constituency, got 508 votes, and Raila got 23,000 votes. That's going to be reversed now. There's no question about that. You know what I mean? Because of a lot of things that are happening, and people one tend to appreciate when, the young man is a genius in his own right. Presumption all along was that the North was going to be kept out of the government completely. But he accommodated them, and he's going now on a Marshall Plan of doing massive projects there. He has reached out to the coast in a manner you cannot imagine. He has reached out to Western Kenya. He has reached out to Luo Nyanza. So there might be quite a little, seismic moves, of certain regions. So you still has, there are a lot of things that are likely to happen in 2027 that will probably mitigate in his favor. Mm-hmm. One thing I have no doubt about my mind is that the mountain will still remain with him. Will remain with
definitely
with Ruto.
But not at 44.7%.
Let me tell you one thing. There are certain things that I'm not an economist, but I've done quite a bit of the international financial markets and other things. What is happening right now is some of these predictions that he gave, that we need to tighten our belts, we need not to default on our international financial obligations because of the reckless borrowing of the past. We need to pay a little bit more taxes and literally tighten our belts. But over a period of time, things are going to begin shifting. And now we're seeing some shifts, like we're just talking about now, where the prices of certain essential commodities are coming down, including and oil and energy and all that. If that trend continues, then of course you can rest assured he would have vindicated himself as far as, and now he's going on a serious the housing thing. Now if that works out well, and that is you can get results in a very short period of time. So the tendency is that a lot of things are going to change.
Thank you. Mugatano.
For me, I think the fundamental question is what is this architecture of the Constitution that only guarantees 2 tribal communities to the presidency? Now, we need to start asking ourselves that question. Then, is this architecture fair to the rest of us? The rest of the 47. That architecture that's a very heavy question that we need to discuss. And usually, the reason it's not being discussed is because we still don't have the numbers. But I think it is better to deal with that issue before it erupts. The American Civil War between the Confederates and those guys in the North,
the Unionists.
The Unionists.
Yes.
Was simply because the guys in the South felt every time everything is going to the North. In fact, Lincoln, the guy who was president during that time, Abraham Lincoln, had no support whatsoever from the Southern Confederates. And the entire support was from the North, and yet he became the president. And these other guys had even declared their own president. And after that, there was a relook at the presidential election system. And they came up with this idea of electors. Every state now has
electoral colleges.
Yeah. And this electoral college, you have electors. So it is not just the popular vote that determines the president in the US. Mm-hmm. There is the popular vote and the electoral college. And it's because of their experience. But people died. So many people died because of that war. So the question that, I think the bigger question that we need to look at as Kenyans is, what is this architecture of the Constitution that says only the majority should win and the rest of us can wait and watch and wait? We need to ask those fundamental questions and see what can be done going forward to accommodate the rest of us. It cannot be that all the time we are spectators. What is it that Tanzania has done, that Julius Nyerere is from a very small tribe, became president for a long time, and the trend has continued? What is it that in Kenya we missed to do that makes the rest of us spectators in the presidential contest? So I think this conversation needs to be had, because it is the reason why you will find that some of our areas remain marginalized, because the treasury, even the people who are there, the politicals who come in power, they have a certain outlook of how the country should be run. They would put money for coffee, they would put money for tea, they would put money for this. But they will not look at, doing projects that can actually make Turkana work, projects that can make Tana River work. It's because they don't come from those areas, and the political outlook is not geared towards supporting marginalized areas. So I think this conversation needs to be had, and I think the sooner the better, so that going forward in future, we will not be saying, oh, it's Muranga's time after Muranga, it's Embu after Embu, it is Meru after Meru, it is, that shouldn't be the case. It should be competence, and it should be spread across the country, which means we need to look at the architecture of the constitution so that it can allow that spread. Those are my submissions.
All right. So when you're talking about...
If you just allow me to interject, exactly that's why we brought about devolution. That's why we brought about equalization fund. If you look, and I gave an example earlier on, a county like Turkana, 10 years after devolution, they've received 120 billion Kenya shillings. If you were to go around that county with good governance, with transparency and accountability, you should see the change. What I think we should fundamentally be addressing is, did devolution achieve what it was meant to achieve? And the answer is, in some counties, yes. In other counties, no. Why? Because regardless of who is sitting as a president, you have a county governor who has the executive powers and a budget to implement. And I think what we're calling marginalized areas that true have been marginalized, the Constitution of 2010 attempted to cure that by creating an equalization fund that was supposed to bring out the differences and finance them so that they could come up. But if 10 years down the line, this I would equate with the way we've been bailing out KQ, the way we've been bailing out Mumias, they'll never make any profit. Why? Because if you make it the business of the government to give fund that you cannot be accounting for, or where transparency and governance is an issue, then there is a problem.
Can I come in on that? You cannot answer the question of presidency with devolution. That's a very clever way of avoiding the question. It's a very clever way. We are not going to accept that.
Dibal, I think Wamatinga has pushed the debate from what Honorable Mugatana was saying. I think the point raised by Senator Mugatana is very, very important and pertinent in this country. The issue is, if we continue the current architecture of our governance structure in terms of the way we do our politics, it's obvious the president will be rotating from central Kenya to Rift Valley, back to central Kenya, and the rest of us...
Because of the issue of numbers.
Yeah, because of the issue of numbers. The rest of us will just be there watching. It will be like a football match where we have people in the benches watching, and there are those who are playing the game. And I think really the most important bit is, I think what Mugatana is saying is, can we push this debate to an area where you are elected as the president of this country on the basis of competency and the manifesto you sell to Kenyans, without people looking at where you come from. Yeah. And I think if you get to that level, and that's where most of the other countries which are developed are now, that really don't care about. That's why you see in UK they can even elect somebody who is an Indian, who is not even. I think the worst minority in that country is elected. You go to other. So I think really what is coming out is that, for us, if we really want to give Kenyans hope, and some of us who are in politics, and I think as Wamatinga said earlier, every politician is ambitious. No politician doesn't want to become a president. That's why you see Mugatana loses, disappears for 10 years, comes back. I'm sure he has ambitions of becoming the president of this country. If the numbers were working, he would be the president. But I think really he's raising a very important point. And that's why I think at one point, you might not be surprised to see at one point, I think it also happened about the time of we get back to the presidency. It's like the rest of Kenyans who are ganging against Central Kenya. Correct. At that point, do you remember?
42 against 1.
People were saying we can't have now a Kikuyu president again, just because of the regional thinking. I think, don't be surprised to see that happening again. If you get to a level where we sit, but the rest of us also, we are Kenyans, and we want also to. And the worst bit, what has happened, and I think this is why you see the president becomes very important. It's what actually the issue of when you become the presidency. there is secureness in terms of pushing resources. You
Exactly.
think where they come from, instead of equitable distribution of resources, there is also a bit of secureness where you find most of the national, the resources, the national budget tends to be also being pushed towards those areas.
Yes.
And then that's where you see the other people start
appointments.
feeling like there's a bit of marginalization, even though it's slow, there's a bit of slow marginalization. And there's something which happens normally when we're budgeting. You would budget for a very big project in Turkana or Tana River where Mugatana comes in the main budget, and it's approved. Comes supplementary, you find those things all disappear. So you find now the ones which are in the right regions are the ones which remain. And this now the marginalization which is actually in terms of resource allocation. How I wish we got a system where we have that equitable allocation of resources, because the resources are central. If you look at most of the conflicts, they always come from resource allocation.
Right.
So I really want to support what
Right. Let's talk to Horrible, because I know also Horrible Farah Maalim has ambition for 2027. And when we're talking about majority, are we prepared also for Farah Maalim to be the president of this country? Because also their community seems to be thriving and growing by the day.
And they are doing very good in numbers.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
That's
yes.
working very hard.
When you're talking about
They are working very hard.
we'll wake up to one day when we know now Farah Maalim will be, if going by the virtue of numerical strength, are we prepared as well to receive other communities like Somali communities in the leadership of this country?
You know, let me tell you one thing. Ngatana put it very well. I mean, Tanzania, if you look at the presidents who basically were presidents in Tanzania, Nyerere is a Zanaki. A Zanaki is a very small sub-tribe of the Kuria in Tanzania, and the whole community is probably less than 100,000. And he was there as a popularly elected, popularly through TANU and everything, and he won the elections. Mkapa is a small community within the Makonde. Within the Makonde. Very, very small community. Kikwete is a Nkwere. The Nkwere is in Bagamoyo. Less than 30,000. Less than 30,000. And then you come to Magufuli. Magufuli's community is within the Skuma, but very small. Very, very small. Finally come to Suluhu. The current president. She's from Zanzibar.
Zanzibar,
yeah. A very small community. But those people, and you know, the vice president of CCM is a Somali. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Abdurrahman Kinana from Arusha is a Somali. There was a time in Kenya that there were more empowered Somali politicians in Tanzania than Kenya. Because the very famous, I'm sure some of you might remember who are probably in my age group, Hassan Diria. Hassan Diria was one of the most celebrated African foreign ministers those days. He was a Somali from Zanzibar. The first police commissioner, deputy police commissioner in Tanzania was a Somali. Abdurrahman Kinana was the minister for defense. And later on became the speaker of the IALA. And now is the vice president of CCM. And many. There was a lady called Halima Titi who was an ambassador. They were all over. And in Kenya, the best we could those days achieve was an assistant minister. You know what I mean? I'm talking about when we had just one assistant, not even a minister. Before 83, we didn't used to have anybody in here. No PS, no undersecretary, we were literally institutionally marginalized. Now, if we want to, Tanzanians made that conscious decision early enough. By the way, the first promoters of TANU, it was a protectorate of TANU, were Zanzibar, were mainly Muslims from the Sykes family, were from Dar es Salaam. They were much more empowered because of the Sultan of Zanzibar and the kind of privileges that all these people enjoyed. But they took Mwalimu, who was a teacher, and installed him as their leader. And Mwalimu was coming from a very powerful Christian Catholic background. But they decided he is going to lead us. We want to have a nation. So Tanzanians started early enough, way before their independence, to literally unite and form this very powerful, strong bloc. And the biggest community on ethnic basis right now in Tanzania are the Skumas. The second biggest are the Chagas. They made sure that none of them gets anywhere near power. You know what I mean? So that worked very well in Tanzania. And in Kenya, of course, we had the reverse. We started off with the big tribes, the unity of the Luos and the Kikuyus at the time of independence, who literally defeated. And then we had Kadu for the small communities.
Yeah.
For the small community. And the Akamba party of Polingei was literally between the two. Now, if you really want to unite the nation and say, we are nations, the Somali nation, the Luya nation, the Kikuyu nation, the Mijikenda nation, the Pokomo nation, then we have to do what he said in the US. In the US, they decided that they were going to weight their representation. They have an electoral college. Now, if you win a certain state, you take the whole block of the electoral college. You win with 50 point something, the whole electoral college belongs to you. Yeah. And if you win, if you lose it, I mean, that is why in California they have 37 House of Representatives, but they have 2 senators. Montana has got only 1 House of Representatives and 2 senators also. Because the Senate is the House of Union to bring the country together, and they have equal representations. Correct. Now, if we want to go that way, I think it's a very powerful way in which, because in the US, I'll tell you, a number of presidents, Adams, Adams, the second president, who was there after George Washington, had 31% of the popular votes, and he defeated the person who had 40-something% of the popular votes, because he got the electoral college, as he puts it. Once those electoral colleges come together, it's more acceptable, because then you have the majority of the states, or the electors from the states on your side. So in that case, you're going to say Tana River will have, so many. Central or Unyeri will have so many. But the popular vote might not necessarily be the person who is going to win. And the logic of that is what we also put in our own constitution, in which we say a minimum of so many counties.
Yes, 24.
24 out of 47, you must have a minimum of 25%.
Yes.
Which means you must have a certain, you're not just going to use what you call the tyranny of numbers to override these things. So unless we're going to relook again at our constitution, Al Gore won against George Bush, the popular votes.
Correct.
Clinton, the lady, Hillary, won against Donald Trump, the popular votes. She had over 3 million votes above him. But their constitution is so structured that the electoral college is the one which votes. And that basically is a more reflection of the diversity of the country itself, without the tyranny of numbers coming into play in here. So if we have to do it, then we have to revisit again our constitution. Failing to do that, I mean, when you set the rules of a game, you don't halfway say, no, these rules don't serve me very right. You know what I mean? You have to accept them. The rules is that we're going to go for the popular votes, and any community that can come together, any regions, whether it's superior or ideological or, in our case, tribal, we just have no choice but to work towards it. But in any case, let me tell you, put the Kalenjin votes and the Kikuyu votes together. I mean, what percentage do they constitute of the overall national votes?
A big percentage.
It's not 50%, but it's below 50%.
It's below 50, but it's a big
it's way almost there. It's way below 50%, I'll tell you, because Kikuyus the mountain is about 25 or 27% of the overall population, and it's about 40%. But of course, when you have 40% locked away, it's very easy to get the other 10% from whatever you have to do. But we have set the rules of the game, and we just have to accept them the way they are right now, until such time that we think this does not serve us very well, the unity of the country is compromised, the development is skewed, and we need to go something like the electoral colleges. But we have tried to do that through the 25%.
Right. Do we think in 2032 that is bound to change and shift completely when you're talking about numbers? And given that what you're saying also on the Farah will be on the ballot in 2027?
Well, I can't speculate now. But I can tell you one thing. But I can tell you one thing.
I have it on good authority that it will be.
But I can tell you one thing for sure. I can tell you one thing for sure. This country is increasingly, slowly, but very surely getting detribalized. Detribalized. I was on a flight. I'll give you my own medical experience one time. There was a Luo lady, very senior in the UN system, who greeted me just across the aisle. And she told me, you must be Farah Maalim. I said, yes. He said, are you by any chance? This is the first question. Thank you very much. I admire you. I respect you. And I love your style of politics. would you by any chance want to run for the presidency? I said, just in case I do that, what will happen? She said, I'll go out of my way to elect you. You know what I mean? So there are many people who think Mungatana can make a very good president. They don't have to be necessarily Pokomos. There are many people who think Farah can be a very good president, and they're probably from Luo Nyanza or from other parts of the country. So that is getting broken. It's only that we haven't had folks coming out and taking that, having the courage to come out into the open. Yeah. Right. And I asked her, I'm a Muslim. I come from the north. I'm a Somali. I mean, there's all those things. And, Somalis, everybody has this one form of discrimination against, Somalis are seen as unfairly doing very well in terms of business and the rest. It also creates a little bit of hard feelings. The same way the Kikuyus are seen as having monopolized power for all that period of time with the Kalenjins. So everybody has an element of prejudice that the community can have against you. I said, despite that, you say, despite that. So there are Kenyans who will go and vote for Makali Muru from all over the country, and he can even get the numbers if he just takes the courage to come out into the open without necessarily pronouncing himself as a Kamba the first time. You pronounce yourself as a Kenyan and go and meet the Kenyans.
Yes. Right. I think going by the last general elections, Kenyans are really moving closer to that. For the first time, as I said earlier on, we had two presidential candidates where none of them was a Kikuyu. I do remember the campaign that was going on around that time. People were saying Kikuyus can never vote for someone who do not come from their background. But people went ahead and stood with the Ruto against the strongest competitor who was being fronted by then the president, who's also from the region. And I think, as Honorable Marim is saying, we are actually moving closer to becoming a nation. Why? I saw people aggressively campaign for their candidates of choice, and it was not because they come from the same ethnical background. Moving forward, I would see a lot of readjustment, and wanting also to thank the president, because he attempted and he actually did quite a good of formation of the government, because again, government is not, an administration is not formed just by the president alone. Yes. It is a composition of many other factors. We do look at people like Musalia Mudavadi and so many other people who are also brought on board. And I think even moving forward, 2032, when it comes to the time of the election, because I think 2027 is gone, that's locked. 2032, I think it will be, that one is locked.
Is it too early to make that course?
Well, I'll tell you this. There has been quite a number of teething problems, and we saw them with Julian Kibaki's time, trying to readjust and to reignite the economy to start growing. And I think the president is actually on the right track. If you look at the indexes, the indicators, you'll see that there are quite a number of them that are speaking for the economy that's going to revamp. Look at the inflation, look at the GDP, look at even the preparedness of the international community to work with the Kenyan. I think this is one of the moments that Kenya is enjoying a very, very high international reputation. Yes. The president, give it to him, he's not only a good diplomat, but he is able to prosecute his case and present himself so ably that he even gets a standing ovation in an EU parliament. That is something that has not happened of late. But having said that, I would say that in 2032, it's going to be a composition of like-minded people. People will come together and form a government. And I think the ethnical card will slowly but surely start getting becoming a second option, because Kenyans now are sitting down and they're discussing issues as Kenyans. And we saw the last election, it's a very, very clear indicator. And I would not have been surprised. Raila picked as a running mate from the central region. Ruto picked also a running mate from central region. And I think moving forward, we'll have candidates who will be picking their running mates from other regions, because Kenyans, as the Honorable Marim is saying, they're actually now starting to converge on ideas and knowing that they have a common problem and they have a common destiny that they can only fight as a united front. However, the law of big numbers, as in our constitution, as currently constituted, will still come into play. You're talking about over 40% of the 44.7% that was given to the Luto's administration and the 13% that was given to Raila. If you are to combine the two together, it would actually mean that that one region could have contributed to 14 plus 13, that makes 57% if they all rally behind the same candidate. However, as a patriotic nationalist Kenyan, I would want to see this country get more and more as much into brotherhood, where we do not look at where you come from, because at the end of the day, regardless of who is in power, there are some common problems that have continued being with us for the last 60 years because of the long policies. Once we start looking at the issues of governance, once we start looking at the issue of service delivery, once we start looking at accountability, then Kenyans will start converging as Kenyans and know that they have a common destiny, that is to grow their country.
All right. Let's hear from Honorable Mugatana. Maybe you can stick to it as well, because we have two Wiper Party members here. We have the Vice Chair and also Honorable Makali as well. Kalonzo Musyoka seems to be another prime solution that people are thinking that should be on the ballot. He's indicated that, yes, come 2027, he will be there. Whether it will be a breakaway from Azimio as it is right now, and whether Azimio will be there is something else that we are waiting to see if that will still be standing at the end of the day. Question is, they say, what sort of concrete policies do you have as Kalonzo Musyoka? What will be dramatically different that we will bring on the table that will take the trajectory of this country on a dramatically different way than what we have currently? Because what we hear you saying is that, oh, I've not been in the ballot. I actually forfeited my presidency for Raila in
3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. And this time I'm going for the broke. So the question is, people are saying that is not a reason enough for you to tell us that now you should be running for presidency, because we want to know. Forfeiture is just not a qualification for you to run for presidency at the end of the day. Do you think his presidency or his candidature will win at the end of the day?
Okay, you know, first of all, I was discussing this yesterday with somebody important, and I was saying, for the first time, I've seen a statement that he is a man who is sort of like determined. Because I told the gentleman, look, this guy has issued a statement that says that I will be in the ballot. I've supported Raila. He doesn't owe me anything. In fact, if he's on the ballot in 2027, it would increase the opportunities or the chances for Kenyans to select. It would be an interesting
inclusion.
You know, an interesting race. That's what he said, and I thought that seems to be a good statement coming from a guy who you know never goes for the thing at the end of it. And this guy told me, Mugatana, put 100,000 with somebody else, a third party, to this conversation. Let us record it. 2027, that man will not run. He will talk nicely. He will talk nicely. He will say what? He will talk very good, what. He will even sound confident, but 2027, Kalonzo Musyoka will not run. And I said, why are you so confident? He said, I mean, history repeats itself. It is like that. And I don't want to speak for him, but I'm giving you the statement from a very good friend who we're in politics together, and I trust his judgment. What I also want to say is this: whoever runs in 2027 must accept the formidable candidature of the incumbent president. President Ruto is delivering, let me tell you. He's delivering. Number one, when they came up with this issue, high cost of living, the president broke it down into two. He said this: the cost of food and the cost of fuel. And he started working on that, and God was on his side, because the rains came and everything, the prices of things went down, you know, in terms of food prices, you know, because production increased. He said, let us support the farmer to produce more, you know, and that has worked. He went into agreements about the fuel. It has worked. EPRA has given us good figures, and it is 2 months consistent, it's coming down. Other things like what the Honorable Amatiga has said, on the international, the president is a great marketer. I am in the Pan-African Parliament, and I tell you, when we invited him to come and speak, the entire African Parliament, you know, 5 from every country in Africa.
We
We
don't.
stood and we clapped and sat down. We stood and we clapped and sat down. And, you know, here Senator Abatinga saying he also got a standing ovation in the European Union. We are talking about a strong candidate who is also owning his development agenda. How? Juzi ameenda hapa Naivasha, amefungua a power generation plant, 1,700 million. For what? To support the EPZ, the special economic zones that he's creating across the country. And he told us that 28 billion has been mobilized by investors, and he gave them certificates, people. So Naivasha economic zone is now a reality. You know, of the 7 special economic zones, 2 have already been recognized by the United Nations Conference on this UNACTAD. That
Entered, yeah.
yeah, UNCTAD. The one that they are saying this is a model. You know, Tattoo City and this one, Technopolis, this is called Konza Technopolis, have been recognized by UNCTAD as a model in terms of planning for environment, governance, and so on. You know, out of the 7 special economic zones, 2 of them have been recognized internationally. Kenya has been given a special seat in Africa on this issue of special economic zones, the committee that is there in Africa. Ruto is owning his development plans as far as the housing, structures are concerned. He's owning his. So that story that we had a problem for us that time with Kibaki, because the opposition came up with a story saying, "You see your development here, you ni serikali." But this time that will not happen because Ruto is owning those projects, and he's moving, telling Kenyans, here we're having difficulties, but we are moving this way. He's offering leadership. It may not be perfect, but he's offering leadership.
Thank you.
Now, against that, should Kalonzo stand? A person, anybody will keep on saying, we are not sure whether he will stand or not. We are not sure. Against a person who has had a reputation like that, against a solid candidate like that, I can tell you, we are going to have William Ruto come back with a very big majority. And like Farah Malim has said,
Thank you.
I'll say this again.